NBA teams have handed out a lot of atrocious contracts during NBA history. There's no way to tell if a player is going to be the same after he signs this huge contract. Ranking for this list is primarily based on lack of return on investment. Most of these players were paid like all-stars, but they produced like bench warmers, often due to injury. This negatively impacted the team's ability to compete, both on the floor and its subsequent free agency bidding wars. Here's a list of the worst NBA contracts in NBA history. Number 9, we have Jim Mcilvaine, who signed a 7-year, $33.6 million contract with the Seattle Supersonics in 1996. 1996 was the year the NBA really started throwing big contracts around. Shaquille O'Neal, Alonzo Mourning, and Juwan Howard all got 7-year, 7-figure deals, and Seattle followed suit by agreeing to a 7-year deal with Jim Mcilvaine. Wait, who? To that point in his brief career, Mcilvaine only had started 6 games with the hapless Bulls. The 1994 second-round pick from Marquette had scored 10 or more points in a game just twice in the NBA and had yet to record a double-double. Evidently, though, this was enough evidence for the Sonics to give Mcilvaine a deal that paid him more in 1996-97 than Sam Perkins and Hershey Hawkins, and almost as much as Shawn Kemp and Detlef Schrempf. Kemp infamously became furious with the franchise and forced a trade to Cleveland the following year. Mcilvaine didn't provide much return on that investment. He was a starting center for 151 of Seattle's games in the 2 seasons before they traded him to New Jersey, but he only had 1 double-double to show for all of that playing time. Number 8, we have Elton Brand, who signed a 5-year, $80 million contract with the Philadelphia 76ers in 2008. For the first 8 seasons of his career, Elton Brand was one of the best power forwards in the league. He consistently had a player efficiency rating north of 20 while averaging 20.3 points, 10.2 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 2.1 blocks per game. In his lone trip to the postseason during his prime, he put up 25.4 points in the 2006 playoffs. Even though Brand missed almost the entire 2007-08 season after rupturing an Achilles tendon, Philadelphia invested big in the hope that he could regain his pre-injury form. He didn't. By no means was Brand terrible with the 76ers, but between the recovery from the Achilles and the shoulder injury he suffered a few games into his big contract, he was only able to give his new team about 70% of what he gave Chicago and Los Angeles, which Philadelphia could have gotten somewhere else for a lot cheaper than $16 million per year. Number 7, we have Timofey Mozgov and Luol Deng, who combined signed a 4-year, $136 million contract. The 2016 spike in the salary cap from $70 million to $94.14 million came at a horrendous time for the Los Angeles Lakers. With Kobe Bryant's massive contract coming off the books after his retirement, they had no choice but to spend recklessly in free agency just to reach the salary floor. Worse yet, they had to do so in a summer when every other team suddenly had more cash to throw around. Thus, Mozgov and Deng got paid like royalty for no reason. Mozgov made slightly less than $5 million in 2015-2016, and he didn't even play well. In fact, after averaging 9.5 points and 6.9 rebounds per game in the previous 2 seasons, he plummeted more than 30% in each of those categories. And yet, his salary more than tripled to $16 million that offseason because the money had to go somewhere. He played just 54 games in his 1 season with the Lakers. And then there's Deng, who the Lakers are paying $18 million per year just to work out with the team. You could argue these 2 contracts weren't bad at all. It maintained the illusion of trying to build a contender without actually doing so, and it put the team in perfect position to spend big this year instead. But as far as short-term return on investment is concerned, the Lakers shelled out a lot of Benjamins for minimal production. Number 6 is Penny Hardaway, who signed a 7-year, $87 million contract with the Phoenix Suns in 1999. Penny Hardaway is right up there with Grant Hill on the NBA's list of guys who might have been all-time greats if they could have stayed healthy. But the reason we're placing Hardaway in the top 10 while not including Hill is because Penny's injury concerns were apparent long before Phoenix made its hefty investment in the point guard. Hardaway was unbelievable in college with Memphis, and he carried that momentum into 3 great seasons in the NBA alongside Shaquille O'Neal with Orlando. He averaged 19.5 points, 7 assists, and 4.7 rebounds and missed just 5 games in those first 3 years. Over the course of the next 5 years, though, he missed almost as many games as he played, primarily due to an awful left knee injury suffered in 1997. Unfortunately for Phoenix, his healthiest season during that 5-year stretch came in the lockout-shortened 1998-99 campaign when Hardaway appeared in all 50 games before hitting free agency. But it was fool's gold. His first season with the Suns was solid, as he averaged 16.9 points and 5.3 assists in 60 regular season games, along with 20.3 points and 5.7 assists in 9 postseason games. After 2 microfracture surgeries on his left knee in 2000, though, he was never anything close to the same. It wasn't until after the Suns unloaded him on the Knicks in 2004 and signed his replacement Steve Nash that offseason that they became relevant again. Number 5, we have Ben Wallace, who signed a 4-year, $60 million contract with the Chicago Bulls in 2006. It was inevitable that someone was going to fork over a ton of dough for Ben Wallace. It's just unfortunate for the Bulls that they won the bidding war. Though he was never much of a scorer, Wallace was an insatiable defender and rebounder during his first 6 seasons with Detroit. In 2001-02, he led the NBA in both rebounds and blocks, and he was an all-star in each of the first 4 seasons before reaching free agency in 2006. Chicago chose to believe the 32-year-old still had a few good seasons left in the tank, but he started wearing down in a hurry. In his first season with Chicago, Wallace's per-game average in points, rebounds, and blocks were all worse than each of his previous 5 years in Detroit. Things only got worse from there. As his numbers dropped about another 20% across the board in year number 2, he didn't even make it to the 2 full seasons before the Bulls traded him. Perhaps the biggest reason Chicago regretted this pickup is that it already had a cheaper and younger version of Wallace on their roster. But instead of sticking with Tyson Chandler, who the Bulls signed to a 6-year, $64 million deal the previous summer, they traded him away for pennies on the dollar to make this Wallace move possible. Chandler blossomed after leaving Chicago and averaged 9.9 points and 10.3 rebounds per game over the course of the next 9 seasons. Number 4, we have Amar'e Stoudemire, who signed a 5-year, $99.7 million contract with the New York Knicks in 2010. 1 year into the Amar'e Stoudemire signing, it looked like the Knicks were going to get their money's worth and then some. He averaged 25.3 points, 8.2 rebounds, and 1.9 blocks in 78 games played for a team that finished above 500 for the first time in a decade. The 28-year-old was named an All-Star for the 6th time in his career and was voted All-NBA second team for the 5th time. And then the bottom dropped out. Stoudemire dealt with poor conditioning, the death of his brother, and a bulging disc in his back during the lockout-abridged 2011-12 season. After 4 straight years of averaging at least 21.4 points per game, that combination of factors resulted in a plummet to 17.5 points. Knee injuries and a reduction in playing time led to another drop to 14.2 points per game in just 29 games played the following year. The downward spiral continued again as he averaged 11.9 points and 4.9 rebounds in 2013-14. That's downright dreadful production from what was the 3rd highest paid player in the NBA that year. Midway through the 4th season of his 5-year deal, the Knicks gave up and bought out the remainder of Stoudemire's mammoth contract. Number 3, we have Joakim Noah, who signed a 4-year, $72 million contract with the New York Knicks in 2016. Most of these were potentially good signings that went terribly wrong. But what exactly did the Knicks expect when they committed to 4 years of paying Joakim Noah a salary on par with that of John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins? At his peak, Noah was a high-value hustle guy. From 2009 to 2014, he averaged 11.5 points, 10.8 rebounds, and 3.4 assists per game. He was an all-star in both 2013 and 2014 and was a foundation piece for a Bulls team that was perennially in the playoffs. Had the Knicks signed Noah to this deal in the 2014 offseason, no one would have blamed them. Heck, it may have been praised as one of the best pickups of that summer. But it was beyond irresponsible to give him this contract after watching him physically deteriorate in 2015 and 2016. Noah's production dropped off a cliff and he lost his starting job long before the series of shoulder injuries that limited to 29 games in the season before hitting free agency. Evidently, though, the Knicks thought he could rediscover his prime form in his 30s. Instead, he has been battling shoulder surgery and knee injuries that limited him to 40 minutes played in the entire 2017-18 season. Number 2 is Rashard Lewis, who signed a 6-year, $118 million contract with the Orlando Magic in 2007. The most stupefying part of Rashard Lewis's 6-year deal, worth almost $20 million per season, is that he was never that good. Teams eventually regretted their big deals with the likes of Elton Brand, Ben Wallace, and Amar'e Stoudemire, but it's hard to fault them for investing in all NBA guys who clearly among the best in the league. Lewis, on the other hand, was a volume scorer who went to 1 All-Star game in his 9 seasons with Seattle. He was never named to an All-NBA team. He never led the league in anything. He had an above-average efficiency rating, but nothing to suggest he deserved to be one of the highest-paid players in the league. Even worse for Orlando, Lewis immediately started to decline upon arrival. After 3 straight years of averaging better than 20 points per game with the Supersonics, Lewis went from 18.2 to 17.7, 14.1, and 12.2 before the Magic were finally able to ship him to Washington. Number 1, we have Chandler Parsons, who signed a 4-year, $94 million contract with the Memphis Grizzlies in 2016. Chandler Parsons' contract is the Mona Lisa of the terrible deals that were handed out in the summer of 2016. Parsons had never been an All-Star. As far as player efficiency rating is concerned, he was a marginally above average player in each of the 4 seasons before hitting free agency. but he also missed the end of both 2015 and 2016 seasons due to knee surgeries, so there were injury concerns on top of his play that wasn't improving. In any other year, owners would have been cautious in their pursuit of this free agent, but in the summer of spending like there's no tomorrow, the Grizzlies made Parsons the 15th highest paid player in the league for the 2016-17 season. Better yet, they committed to increasing that salary by roughly $1 million per year over the subsequent 3 years. Even if he replicated what he had done for the previous 4 years, it would have been a bad contract. Giving a guy Anthony Davis money for Jay Crowder production doesn't make sense, but at least it would have been better than what Memphis actually received. That's it for today's Sports Mafia video. Thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments which contract you think is the worst. And if you like this video, please subscribe.